Okay, call to order the August 1st meeting of the Waverly City Council. First order of business is Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Dear God of all seasons, we thank you, gracious Creator, for these summer days and our time to be outdoors and enjoy the created order. Bless this evening's deliberations. Give us wisdom and patience. In thy name we pray. Okay, we have an agenda before us. Do I have a motion on the agenda?
Move approval.
Moved.
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor say yes.
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 The agenda is approved, 6-0, one absent. Next up, we have our regular business meeting minutes from July 18th.
Move approval of July 18th minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Minutes have been approved. Our guest council person for August is Chuck Moshek. And I'll give you just a minute here to kind of introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, family, etc.
All right. My name is Chuck Mashik. I live here in Waverly. My wife, Kim, and I have been married for 10 years now. We got 3 kids, Theodore, Timothy, and Charlotte. And they're 4, 2.5, and 8 months. So they all attend Waverly Child Care and Preschool for child care and preschool education. I work as an assembler down at John Deere in Waterloo at the Northeast site, and my wife works at Waterloo Public Library through the state of Iowa. I'm a member of St. Mary Church and the Knights of Columbus out there.
Well, we welcome you for the month. You have all of the rights to engage in discussion and ask questions. As any of the council members are, you just don't get a chance to vote on things.
All right.
Okay, next up we have a proclamation for National Night Out. So I read that first and then do the vote on it?
Whatever you desire.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and read the proclamation for it. Whereas the National Association of Town Watch are sponsoring a unique nationwide crime, drug, and violence prevention program on August 2nd, 2016, entitled National Night Out, and whereas the 33rd Annual National Night Out provides a unique opportunity for the city of Waverly to join forces with thousands of other communities across the country in promoting cooperative police community crime prevention efforts, and whereas the citizens of Waverly play a vital role in assisting the Waverly Police Department to control crime, drug, and violence in the city of Waverly, and this partnership is an important goal of the National Night Out 2016, and whereas it is essential that all citizens of Waverly be aware of the importance of crime prevention programs and impact that their participation can have on reducing crime, drug, and violence in the city of Waverly, and whereas police community partnership, neighborhood safety, awareness, and cooperation are important themes for the National Night Out program, now therefore I, Mayor Pro Tem Tim Kangas, do hereby call upon all citizens of Waverly to join the Waverly Police Department and the National Association of Town Watch in supporting the 33rd Annual National Night Out on August 2nd, 2016. Further, let it be resolved that I, Mayor Pro Tem Tim Kangas, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, August 2nd, 2016 as National Night Out in the city of Waverly. A motion on that?
I move we proclaim National Night Out as Tuesday, August 2nd, 2016 for the city of Waverly.
Second?
Moved and seconded. All in favor say yes.
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 It's approved 6-0, one absent. Chief, did you want to say anything about that? What we got going on tomorrow night?
I appreciate the support from the council and Mayor Pro Tem and the rest of the citizens of Waverly. Tomorrow night, if you'd like to come out and join, the rest of the Waverly officers will be at Coleman Park from 4:30 p.m. to roughly 8:30. And there'll be hot dogs, snow cones, cotton candy, and inflatables, all free for everybody that wants to come out and visit with us. the majority of our department will be there, except for one that's on approved vacation. Otherwise, the rest of us will be out there. So if you're going to come out and meet and visit with us, we welcome to visit with you. Thank you.
Next on our agenda is public comments. Public is invited to speak on anything that is not on the agenda. Do we have anybody that wishes to speak for public comments? Seeing none, we will move on to our consent calendar. We have 8 items on our consent calendar this week. Pay request from Global Appraisal Services for the Waverly Municipal Airport Land Acquisition 2012 for $900. Pay request from Benchmark Agribusiness Incorporated for the Waverly Municipal Airport Land Acquisition 2012 for $500. Pay request from Team Services Incorporated for the Waverly Municipal Airport Runway 1129 Rehabilitation 2014 for $354.80. Pay request from WHKS Incorporated for the Dry Run Creek Improvements Project for $45,887.18. Pay request from Heartland Asphalt Incorporated for the 16th Street Southwest reconstruction for $190,019.06. And a pay request from Peterson Contractors Incorporated for the Dry Run Creek Improvements Project for $224,774.01. Approval of the June 2016 cash disbursements, and a Class E liquor license for the Waverly Hotel Group.
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussions on the items? Okay, all in favor, say yes.
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 Opposed? That is approved 6-0 with 1 absent. We will move on to regular business, item 1, which is resolution 1665, which is approving or replacing resolution 1664, which was our local option sales tax language, and calling for the general, placing it on the general election. We had some language change on that, correct?
Actually, what we found out was that the timing of the new one versus the current one was a little different. If a new one were to be voted in, it would not take effect until the current one would expire in July 1 of 2019, rather than just take effect next July.
I misspoke. I said language change. We're not changing what we put on the proposition, but it's actually in the wording of how the date runs.
Well, and to be completely honest, we have to change it back to what we originally voted for wording, so the capital improvement project part, that's out of it now, so that we could finish the fire station bond payments. Okay. That will now be taken care of, so the language is out of there.
Still controlled by the current resolution.
That is correct.
Current sales tax that was approved, and this is just the new one that's coming in. Okay.
Luckily, this is it. We have no more time to get another opinion, so this is it. We move forward.
Somebody else from the state
that's
has
the end of
an
it.
idea.
I'm not calling anybody else from the state. So between the attorneys and the state, I don't want to know any more about this than I already do. I just want to put it out there and vote it.
Okay. Any discussion from audience? Public?
Be helpful maybe to read the language.
That would be not a bad idea to. You're saying just the paragraph 2. What's going to be on the ballot, or how do you want it?
Yeah, just maybe not the whole ballot, but just the 2 lines of what the money would be allocated to if this were to go forward.
Letter B, the bottom of the page, sir.
I've got it. If you want me to read it, I've got it in front of me. I think I have it anyway. 100% of such revenues to be applied for streets and bridges, trail, river, or park-related improvements in infrastructure, and public safety vehicles and related equipment.
That's the language that will appear on the ballot for us. Any further discussion, council? We've kind of gone over this. This is just getting it clarified to the right timeline for us. Okay, do we have a motion?
Move Resolution 16-65, approving replacing a Resolution 1664, proposing the question of imposition of local option sales tax services tax not to exceed 1% to be submitted to the qualified electors of the city of Waverly, Iowa, the November 8th, 2016 general election, and submitting the question of the imposition renewal of local sales and services tax to the qualified electors of the city of Waverly, Bremer County, Iowa, and approving ballot question for local sales and services tax election.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. No further discussion, we'll just go to a roll call on this.
Resincheck.
Yes.
Waldstein.
Yes.
Lampy.
Yes.
McKenzie.
Yes.
Scher.
Yes.
Kangas.
Yes. I vote is 6-0 with one absent. Resolution 1665 is adopted. Item 2 is Resolution 1666, which is approving to move forward with engineering needed to begin construction for Phase 1 of Cedar Lane, Phase 1 of the 20th Street Northwest, and the Cedar River Parkway expansion. City Administrator, a little background, or Mike, I'm not sure which.
Yes, sir. I'll give you a little brief background on it. As we've gone through a lot of the projects we've talked about in the next 5 to 7 years that are coming up, a lot of them have already been addressed, from the Green Bridge to Bremer Avenue. We've talked about commercial development, which with the Terex issue, that kind of changed how we're looking at commercial development going forward, that site. We've looked at the trickling filter need, which is probably about 3 years out, our best estimation. And we've looked at a lot of other items. The next items coming up for construction possibility would be first part of Cedar Lane, first part of 20th Street Northwest, Eisenach Village, and then of course the Cedar River Parkway expansion, which has been generally discussed at length as well. The engineering of these projects can take anywhere from 6 months to a year, depending on the timing and the complexity of them, with Cedar Lane being the simplest, the 20th Street being the next most complicated, because the railroad makes that a little more interesting in the middle. And then, of course, the Parkway, because of the size and scope and the possible property acquisition there, is, of course, the most complex. And that could easily take a year to get the engineering done. My goal would be to ask the council to approve the engineering so that when these projects are completed as far as the engineering process, we'll kind of have a way to look at the total scope of what we're seeing. But none of these would start until, at the soonest, next spring, at which point we'll know the cost of the Green Bridge, we'll know what the Bremer Avenue costs, and the source of funding will be, as far as, will the DOT front most of that money for us? Will we have to pay some up front, all up front? We'll have all those answered. The good thing with the engineering is it's not as if it goes bad. There's no expiration on it. It can sit for years once it's completed. But if opportunities arise in the meantime to have funding for these projects, such as if we do not have to fund all of Bremer Avenue up front, and there is room to do a project like 20th Street or Cedar Lane, I'd like to have the engineering at least completed or close enough they could be done, so everything doesn't sit for another year waiting on other projects to get in line. And so that is the goal. We'd given some estimates of some of the costing in the spring when we do potentially go to a debt issue for whatever projects are coming up. That could be factored in, especially for the Parkway expansion if that is approved. Some of the other possible options for funding have been local option sales tax. I know Cedar Lane was planned in about 2 or 3 years ago. It was planned in to be done in the next spring. That is the simplest of them because there's not a lot of land acquisition by any means. It's one of the shorter routes, and it's just dollar-wise the least expensive. And it's a simpler engineering agreement, which is why you'll see it next in the agenda. But by approving this, you're not allocating it. These are the projects done in this order. Council still has to approve all that. I just like to have the possibility of getting an engineering agreement drafted so we can get these in motion. Because again, 6, 9, 12 months is easily possible before these could even be brought to be put out to be bid. And especially with the Parkway, another year until you could even bid it, with the want to get that accomplished, I just thought it was time to at least start getting these looked at. When you go down the priority ranking that I had done earlier in the council, these would be the next 3 after the other ones we've looked at from various timing issues need to be done later, 3, 4 years out. These are the next 3, except for the Adams Parkway Bridge, which again is going to be addressed in the near future. That may be a spring project as well, but it's a different engineering than what your typical highway reconstruction or construction itself would be. So in a very long, short answer, that's why this is on here.
So this resolution, if I understand it correctly, is despite the fact that there are dates for possible construction, the resolution itself is simply to approve that engineering work proceed for all three.
Correct. Yeah, that does not put us in, that is the soonest we would look at possibly constructing these projects. 17 for Cedar Lane, 18 for 20th Street, 18 getting actual construction done in the Parkway, 'cause it will take that full year probably to get the engineering done. So if we wait for another year, it pushes everything out. I just wanted to at least have it done ahead of time so that we could get this moving and have them on the shelf slated for funding opportunities as they arise.
You list source of funds as general obligation bonds, lost, and revenue bonds. The bonds haven't been approved yet, though, correct?
That's where this funding could come from. And, once the engineering is started, the agreement, the actual process would begin from a funding standpoint. But we're looking at probably February or April. You can see April on 20th Street, probably closer to February for Cedar Parkway to even approve an agreement to start the engineering, as the documents need to be getting finished. The only one that would be possibly coming sooner would be Cedar Lane, because we talked about it's the less expensive. It's the simplest. That one would be happening sooner than later. And if I'm missing anything, Mike, if you want to jump in, I feel like I'm kind of getting most of it, but I might be missing the detail.
So of these three projects, Cedar Lane is the only one that right now is effectively in the pipeline, that it is identified in the budget, and money is actually budgeted to begin the design work and proceed into construction. The other two, for instance, the Cedar River Parkway, we have not, in effect, budgeted for the engineering, let alone the construction. But given the timeline to put plans and specifications together for a 2018 construction season, we need to initiate negotiations with a consultant and bring an agreement to the council probably in January or February, which is effectively ahead of approving the budget for 17-18. And we didn't want to get on the wrong side of the council in initiating discussions without, in effect, your approval to proceed to that next step, and then bring an agreement for council consideration in February for the Cedar River Parkway and April for 20th Street Northwest.
So this is more of a, we give you permission to go ahead and start negotiating costs for engineering.
Especially with the Cedar River Parkway and 20th Street Northwest. Again, Cedar Lane is in the 16-17 budget. That is identified utilizing local option sales tax. Now, as James alluded to, if that may not be the final funding source for that project, depending on how things are packaged and bundled going forward. And that's another reason, is that in order for James to proceed forward with discussion with bond counsel on issuing debt, they need to know that the council is aware of the projects proceeding forward, and again, that you're fully informed as to.
Obviously, the Cedar River Parkway extension is eligible for some federal money. For the other two, 16th Street, wasn't there some federal money involved in that too?
It's classified as a federal aid collector street. Cedar Lane is not, and 20th Street is not.
Just to top off the wonderful news too, we did not get our Tiger grant. So list came out, thought it looked funny because we weren't on it. Apparently, we were not funded. The only one in the state that was some project in Des Moines. So we did not get the Tiger grant, which we weren't exactly holding our breath for that. It would have been a nice piece of money to have gotten, but really instead of doing a single year of bond for the Parkway, it would just be a 2-year overlapping of fiscal year timing wise. So it's not by any means a problem. It's just would have been nice to have had that extra $6 million sitting there coming from the feds, and it just isn't coming. So we counted on not having that going forward, and we developed the timeline from it. It's just would have been really nice to have had that.
Am I correct in thinking that when we did the environmental impact, some of those things, that covered both the east and west side of the river, or will that?
Yes,
have
it
to-
did. Yeah.
So this is truly just the road design and land acquisition, those type of things?
Correct.
But even the Cedar Lane item, which again, I don't want to get too far ahead in the agenda, you're talking late November, December before you'd even vote to put a hearing together, which we would be well beyond our strategic planning by that point. We would know what the local option vote is. We'd have a lot more information before we get to that as well. So even with Cedar Lane being programmed, there'll be a lot more information available by the time you would move to the additional steps of possible hearing, et cetera, to even advance that. So that's why it's starting, but yet it's not a lockdown. It's done. It's happening. There's a lot of information to gather yet. Really, the Parkway is driving it, but again, 20th Street, it's right there as well. There's been a lot of discussion on that, and then of course Cedar Lane as well. Since the late 90s, early 2000s, we found the documentation on that. So these are the natural three additional going forward. Eventually, you'd see phase 2 of each of those. The pool project, that's the next series then of projects timeline-wise moving out along with the trickling filters. And
Just because I get questioned almost weekly, Cedar Lane would be resurfacing as well as adding a walking portion to the roadway,
Total rebuild.
total rebuild
With concrete,
plus
with concrete pavement.
a walking lane, or would the walking lane still be part of the official road?
We can get to that in the next agenda item.
Okay.
So this engineering estimate is just a staff estimate, not based on any quotation from the engineering firms, so true?
Cedar Lane is more of a quote. The other two are estimates.
I guess just to, I see this, what you're saying about it being in the budget, but the amount isn't that different. So is it a simpler, I mean, you said it's a simpler project. Right.
It's simpler than 20th Street and the Parkway. That's
Okay.
why it's easier to get the agreement together, and it's been in the pipeline a bit longer than those other two as well.
So that would be the primary, the timing of things is a primary reason for having it first on our agenda for approval in terms of a specific project. I know this is getting into the next
Right.
agenda item, but just so I understand this fully. So, I mean, to me, it looks like it's not, I mean, it's only a $5,000 difference for the engineering costs, but it sounds like it's a matter of how long it will take to get one thing done, to start it, to move on to the next thing, to get going on that. Is that right?
Correct. And the other thing we haven't factored in is when Bremer Avenue does happen, depending on where that starts, that really will determine timing of these other projects. I mean, nothing is simple. That's the hard part, because if you're doing projects in the west end of Bremer, which I think is where we kind of would like to start, so we give the downtown a little bit of a breather, then you would not probably be able to do 20th Street because it parallels right up with that western side of the event. If you start on the east side, then of course Cedar Lane would not be happening because that's on the other piece of that, and that makes that more complicated. So you really have to look at where you are with Bremer Avenue also to allow these projects to happen, so that you're not landlocking people in with no access. Same one thing with the Adams Parkway Bridge deck. When that gets redone again with Cedar Lane, that can't be done in tandem either, because that'll then cut off another part of the highway. So it all kind of blends together, and I guess we could talk about this for quite a while. My goal is to just get them started so that we can eventually proceed when the timing and the opportunity come around and everything gets settled in for these other projects, just because of the length of time it takes to get the engineering finished.
I heard somebody taking a breath to get ready to go.
Getting ready to.
Just
see if there
catching
was any
mine.
audience or public comments.
Yeah, I was just, probably, if I was looking at this cold, out on TV, or, maybe if someone read the agenda, they might wonder why is Cedar Lane Phase 1, why Cedar River Parkway, and why 20th Street, as opposed to maybe all the other things they might have in their back of their mind. And I think you've articulated that we've been talking about these for a long time. But then they always rise to the top. I wonder, and we need to do the engineering work before we can move forward with any of it. which is normal. I wonder if we can continue to work on the prioritization work that you've been proposing, so we can have, it'd be good, because I know some information on these 3 projects that maybe some of the public doesn't, on some of the benefits that they'll bring and so forth, and the economic development opportunities that I see from all 3 of these. It'd be good for us to be able to articulate that to the public. I'm in support of these, but I'm not sure everyone might know all the details of why I would support it. Some details that we probably aren't able to talk about yet because there's some things still in the works and so forth. So
That's correct.
I'd like to. The first thing I'd like to do is make sure that we move quickly, and so people understand why we've prioritized these 3 projects. Probably the second one is I'm assuming as we go to, as we talked about working with engineering firms and so forth, it'll probably go to bid and so forth with those. These aren't locked in. We'll probably discuss who might do it and so forth.
Correct.
This is just approving that to get the ball rolling on that.
Yeah, you'd have an agreement coming back, such as with Cedar Lane. You'll have an engineering agreement come back to even get that started once that's developed. This is before that even gets started. As Mike said, we didn't want to get sideways with the council, but just going in and doing this without you having at least some knowledge of why we were starting to get these going. But that's a good point, Dave. I mean, when you look at these areas, we talk about the Parkway extension and wanting to add that arterial south, but we have major reconstruction to do too, both 20th Street, past phase 1, and then of course Cedar Lane even further around the curve there as well. These are 2 large parts of the city. When you look at the northern half of Waverly, these are large areas around that river that collect a lot of traffic, and they're kind of arterials in themselves almost. A lot of traffic, a lot of houses affected, a lot of businesses that kind of have these bypasses too. But that's the main reason we were wanting to get started. Because again, when I go through the ranking, most things have been addressed or will be addressed separately at some point. These were the next 3 in line to get started, and then they would be followed by phase 2 of Cedar Lane, 20th Street, the pool renovations, and then depending on where we would be with economic development work within the mix of this, that also kind of gets developed through too. But yeah, that was the main reason for it, was to get it started. But as we go through our strategic planning, September, October, a lot of what you're discussing will come out in greater depth, whether it be numbers or traffic or what it may be, and that'll help to prioritize these. So these are not in any specific order. This is just when they could happen, but you will determine when they do happen, and we are just looking to get started.
And we'll have to, beyond the engineering agreement that we'll have to approve, we'll also have to approve the public hearing dates and all of that. So that'll, prioritization will be reflected in those kinds of decisions as well.
This is the first of many times you're going to see these projects coming forward to even get them started. So,
yeah, I can almost see a simple 1-page document on each one of these with 5 points of what they'll bring to the city of Waverly, and it'd be good to articulate that.
absolutely.
And I think for me, I don't remember the specifics, but, just in conversation in the past, if something like that could be included. I think at some point we got information on, usage, traffic on each of those areas as well. Not that, I'm not saying it has to be up to date, but in relative terms, I think that factors into prioritization as well. How many people are using each of these roadways?
Yeah, and one of the challenges with Cedar Lane, it's not just vehicle traffic.
Right.
It's also the pedestrian traffic that's out there. So
The other side is that we've been talking about river usage forever, recreational usage, and there's a lot involved in that we may not think of right off the bat. So
Absolutely. You look at the number of campers, and when you drive up Cedar Lane and the traffic, the campers, the joggers, the dog walkers, it is just thick with activity. And then, Northwest, 20th Street Northwest, we've heard from there, from the safety issues and the people there, and then the traffic starting to flow there. These are the 2 next logical reconstruction areas, and of course, the Parkway is the big new construction that we're hoping to get that arterial through. So, yeah, it just makes sense that these are the 3 to get started going, because before you know it, you'll be looking at the second phase. If there's additional work being done off 20th Street, additional development potentially, the rest of Cedar Lane to connect it to Horton Road, kind of make that full loop. as the alternate down towards Nestle. So, yeah, very large reconstruction projects and just affect a very large part of the northern half of the city. So,
Any public comments on this before we go? Okay.
Hi, I'm Mary French. I'm at 1902 Knight Avenue in Eisenach Village, and they're my posse back here. We want to thank the council for agreeing to go ahead with the engineering for 20th Street. We feel that's good progress. We're extremely disappointed that that the Cedar Lane reconstruction preparation of plan documents is going ahead of the 20th Street documents. And especially when I hear that the reason is because it's an easier project to do.
that's not the only reason, Harry. I'll let you finish, but that's
yeah.
not the only reason.
I understand that's not the only reason, but that's the reason given out here. I think you need to look at safety, and you're talking about people walking. Once I heard that essentially 20th was in competition with Cedar Lane, I drove Cedar Lane. If 20th was in the same shape as Cedar Lane, we wouldn't be here. Cedar Lane, it's wide, it's open, there's no ditches on either side. You can walk on any piece of that road, and you can walk on the shoulders. If you go on 20th Street, you're walking on the road. There are no shoulders because of the ditches. And if you're going on the east side, you're 5 foot off of the side of the road because of the slope on the road. Nothing has been done on that road for years. We've got people that have been living there since 2008 that when they moved in, it was on the 5-year plan, and it's still on the 5-year plan with no movement forward. We have roughly 46 units out there at Eisenach that are occupied, 10 more that are sold and will be occupied by the end of the year, and another 30 to 35 coming. It's a major development, and we feel that we need that road reconstructed before Cedar Lane is reconstructed. Thank you.
Pete Lampy. I live on Cedar Lane and have for over 40 years. The only thing that's been done on Cedar Lane since I've been out there has been basically from the ski land property and where my property is, the east shoulder has been widened when the city was doing a project, had some extra dirt to fill it out. So they were able to build that shoulder out on that section coming to the south. The amount of foot traffic, bicycle traffic that has increased in 40 plus years has been amazing. You have, at certain times of the year when the cross-country teams are going and everything else, you've got hundreds of people on the lane at one time. There's quite often that vehicle traffic basically has to stop because the runners don't know how to get off. The reconstruction of that road has been needed and has been discussed for over 30 years. There's, when Murphy Addition was annexed in, it was a matter of, basically it was still a gravel road pretty much for most of it. We were doing some seal coat to the city limits, which was just to the north end of the ski club property. The rest of it was county. It was gravel and dirt. The sub-base on that road was never really properly put in. It was done in a hurry. There were some issues with the contractor at the time when that road was built. Keep hearing where we've got 35 new homes out here at Eisenach. There's over 150 existing homes that drive onto Cedar Lane every day. There's lots that are being opened up. BDNK is opening up some more properties there. JD's property is filled up already. The Murphy Addition and the second Murphy Addition. I think we've waited long enough for getting reconstruction, so I hope that you can keep this as a priority and get it done. Thank you.
think you need to take into consideration, too, the traffic that we've got from Bartles. They're using 20th Street now as their main entrance, and you've got a major employer using that as their front entrance. And that road is a pretty poor-looking, front entrance for them as well as for Eisenach. In addition, we can't have joggers, we can't have bicyclists, we can't have the cross-country team running down 20th Street because it isn't safe. Obviously, Cedar Lane must be safer since that's where they're going.
I'm just looking at, pulled up the budget and kind of looked, because when I looked at the 70,000, I was like, yeah, we only had 35 for the budget this year, but I'm also looking, we've still got a little over 200,000 in the Cedar River Parkway budget, so there would be some funds that we could transfer if we wanted to get going forward with the 20th Street as well.
That's
Don't
correct.
have the full million to do the Parkway just yet, but
No, and
there's
that's,
funds in there to do the engineering for the 20th Street and get that going too, to be even potentially line that up for next year if that's.
Well, here's the dilemma. If the west end of Bremer Avenue from the railroad tracks west is under construction next summer, it's not our recommendation to do them both. Additionally, given the amount of design work and effort that would go into it and the coordination and approval of the railroad and the DOT, because of the railroad, we don't have enough lead time to develop a project for construction in 2017.
When we're talking about the 20th Street there, are we talking about going all the way from Bremer Avenue North, or are we talking just from?
No, the
North?
phase one would be from Fifth Avenue North past the entrance to Eisenach. The railroad crossing itself is north of $500,000 for 100 feet of reconstruction. When looking at also adding railroad signals and gates.
Yeah, but I'm just wondering how much conflict if you have West Bremer under construction and you're not until you get all the way up to Fifth Avenue before you're dealing with 20th Street. You got 5 blocks there. You got all the light there at Third Avenue.
It's not our recommendation, but additionally, you don't have enough lead time on the design work to put that together. It is now August, and you're probably in the neighborhood of 9 months of design work to get to letting. So we don't think that it's reasonable that you're going to be able to put together a project and get competitive bids on it and complete it in what would be late 2017.
But if we're talking about the engineering work, and what James said, I thought was that the engineering work can sit. I mean, I know they wouldn't want it to sit. They would want us to move ahead on it. But what would prevent us from starting the engineering work?
Nothing. April is kind of the drop dead date in order to allow enough lead time for a February 2018 letting. You can certainly launch the project sooner on the design side, but don't do it with the expectation that it's going to be built in 2017.
But I mean, even for Cedar Lane, strictly speaking, I think what we would be acting on, not now, but in the next agenda item, is just approving an engineering agreement, not necessarily yet approving bid letting and construction.
No, but I have mapped out the timeline.
I see that.
To proceed through the public hearing and the letting.
Yeah,
As far
I see
as
that.
when the construction occurs, we need to, again, coordinate that window of opportunity to coincide with what's happening on Bremer Avenue.
just for clarification, when I hear the term in competition, I want to make sure folks understand there's commitment by the council to do both projects. It's more of a timing issue
Right.
than one or
it's
the
not a
other.
competition.
So,
Yeah, that's kind of what I was asking for, kind of the documentation, because there's a lot of planning that went on and stuff, and so I'll say everything wrong as I go forward, but there's been a lot of planning that's gone on, and I would even say 2018 might be aggressive for 20th Street, but we're not prioritizing that tonight. We're basically approving so they can get started. Those dates are fluid.
Well,
I'm not committing you to anything, but the dates are very fluid. They're just estimates at this point.
To me, this gives us the information we need to
Yeah.
prioritize based on funding and those type of things.
I think we can say that, but I also understand why when when the folks who are here, see that we have one action item that approves engineering work for all three, but the next action item is to proceed with a particular one that, I can see why they're saying, well, why would that one go first? But I too would want to emphasize what my other couple of colleagues here have said, and that is, that it is not a competition, and it is a matter of, and maybe you've lost faith because you think we haven't been moving forward. But I think the plan is that the engineering work will be done for all three, and it's just a matter of timing in the next couple of years. If this is anywhere close to being right. And that timing, I think, has to do with some of the other issues that have been mentioned here already. But so I guess I understand the frustration, but I also would say that there is progress being made.
And I guess my thought is just, why can't we go forward and get an engineering agreement we've got the funds, we could do that for the 20th Street. If it's going to take longer to organize and get the DOT, the railroad in place, why wait to get that started? Why don't we get them going now? Okay, maybe we are looking at 2018 as that construction time, but we start putting it on their radar now rather than waiting until next year to put it on their radar, which then may push it back yet another year. Let's go ahead and start that discussion with them and saying, hey, this is what we want to do. This is
well,
where we'd like to go.
we were looking at waiting until after the February lettings. So what's coming up in February? The proposed, we're proposing to have the bid letting on the 3rd Street Southeast Bridge repairs. The DOT is having their Bremer Avenue is in their February letting schedule. Cedar Lane is in the letting schedule, and so we want it, and it also gets us past the vote on the local option sales tax in November. So we saw it important to get past those bid openings so we know what the cost is before we, in effect, launch into commitments on another project, and that being 20th Street. And launching forward and committing to design work on the Cedar River Parkway. We have a lot of large projects out there, and we were looking at getting to bid lettings on several of those before we commit it to the engineering agreements on a couple of more.
How does it?
So I'm hearing we're not prioritizing, but we're letting the one before we even do the engineering on the other, even though they're not prioritized one in front of the other, but we're actually going to be doing the letting in February on Cedar Lane.
Correct.
But not doing 20th Street until after that. So
That is if the council decides to do letting. I have to pause the mic on that. That is, you are approving the engineering agreement today, and that's all you're approving. While it has been scheduled out, that's not necessarily the timeline.
And the way it's laid out right now, that's the only one we're going to have any information on.
It's possible, yes. If you want Northwest 20th Street done and the engineering started, we can do it. We'll pile on. That's fine. And we'll get going with Cedar River Parkway as well. We'll get that gone and get that on too. We can get 6 or 7 going at one time. We're trying to pace it out a little bit based on the rankings that you had and kind of how this looked. But if the council wishes, absolutely. We'll get it going. We'll pile them on. We'll get engineers all over the place going in here. And that's not a problem for me. I have no problem. I'm loving it. Let's get some projects going.
Mike, tell
Just
me.
pacing is all it is.
Yeah.
Sorry, Edie.
No, that's all right. Tell me a little bit more about how this works with, clearly, just like with Highway 3 Bremer Avenue, we've got a third party involved, which complicates it. We don't have that on Cedar Lane. We do have it, again, on 20th Street. So how does that work in terms of our own, what kinds of things would we have to negotiate with the railroad, and how does that play into the engineering work that's done? Can they work on parallel tracks? Do they have to work together? Is there a sequence by which they have to give us information, or how does that work?
On 20th Street, so we've asked the DOT for funding assistance on installing traffic lights and gates. We need to figure out how the reconstruction of 20th Street is going to impact that funding. In talking with the railroad, our local contact is going to be retiring, I think, at the end of the year. He is very interested in having us enter into agreements with the railroad before he retires. He thinks that will help the process along. Those agreements are going to talk about ownership and maintenance responsibilities and liability issues associated with that crossing. And in the future, who's going to be responsible for maintenance? We're going to, I think, probably end up having some maintenance responsibility, ownership in such as the crossing lights and gates that are installed. Again, it is the growth of the community is what is dictating, warranting the addition of these crossing lights and gates. It is our growth and development, not the railroads. So they're going to be looking towards us to cover that cost. So these are things that need to be worked out.
Right. So when we then ask an engineering firm to do their work on design, et cetera, for 20th Street, then what do they do with that part that has to do with railroad crossing?
They typically handle all the coordination with the railroad on behalf of the city. Eventually, those agreements have to come back to the city council for review and approval.
But they work with them. They're the ones who are working.
Exactly. And then like any construction liability, contractor liability for the roadway and signal improvements, there's agreements and insurance requirements that must be incorporated into the construction documents, into the plans and specifications. And all that gets reviewed and approved by the railroad as part of that process.
Before it comes back
they
to
can
us.
be finalized and go to bid. Yeah.
I think in light of that, another consideration and reason for moving forward as quickly as possible is you're working with all of these entities and you've got to get them coordinated. I used to work for the government. I know how long it takes to get a response. And, whatever timeline you put together, if you don't put some float in there, we're going to end up once again going, well, we don't have drawings, we don't have engineering done in time because somebody didn't respond. So we need to move forward on that as soon as possible so that we've got some float time in there when we don't get responses when we need them.
That was kind of my point, was going ahead and getting going on this. And
You bet. We'll have it to you within a month.
Isn't
How
that
soon can
kind
we
of
get
what-
agreements for these two put together and back to council?
Well, we have Cedar Lane, so it's.
I mean, the other two. How soon can we get Parkway on and 20th Street and get it all going at one time? Month?
You want the
2 months?
Parkway engineering agreement ahead of the local option sales tax vote?
yeah, that one I'm not as worried. The 20th,
So we don't think the Parkway is as important as 20th Street? Is that what I'm hearing from you then?
I'm just thinking the cost.
That takes a year to develop. we're
But again,
talking,
you're
I mean,
talking-
timing-wise, it's a full year.
Yeah. And it's going to take some time to do that and figure out the funding on that too, so we could get started with it. I don't know, your projected for the engineering contract for that is $1 million. I don't know where we've got that. I know we've got 200,000 there that would cover the 75 or so for the 20th Street.
We would get that in the spring, about the time they get moving forward on that, partial payments of that in a full year. We could fund that accordingly into the spring, get that money allocated when we do the bonds.
Maybe,
I think 20th Street, I need until an October council meeting.
one thing I guess I might add is, maybe we're just kind of saying this wrong. I would say 20th Street has been started first, because you're working with the railroad. That's a major piece of this, is the crossing. And I think we said that the rest of it's easy in comparison to the other streets. So you're already started working with the railroad to do the crossing. So that's already in place. Maybe, I think we're not putting one in front of the other tonight. We've already put 20th Street in front of the others because you're already working with them. And you're
Well, we've been.
so doing design work on the street and stuff is kind of irrelevant now, because we're working already on that.
With both Cedar Lane and 20th Street, over the years, there's been incremental type improvements done. As Pete Lampy said, in 2006, we did some shoulder widening on Cedar Lane. We've done some bank stabilization as well. On 20th Street, last year, we added the box culvert. The city has invested money into, at that point, it was the box culvert. It was a one-lane bridge. That was the most dangerous thing on there. So we made incremental improvements. And that's where, it almost seems like we're trying to create a competition at which one is worse. And, we've been doing some incremental improvements to both over the years. So Cedar Lane is the one that has been out there, for literally the 20 years I've been here. Pete says it goes back to the 77 annexation. And that's the one that was actually incorporated into the budget. We did budget for culvert improvements on 20th Street, and then it was to move back to Cedar Lane to do more improvements. We're not doing the whole thing. We're doing about 60% of the length, which is about half the total cost, because the next 40% is going to be more costly because it involves some grading where the guardrail section is, and then also replacement of a box culvert up by Pelican Park. So we're not throwing everything at Cedar Lane. We're only doing part of it, and then we're going back to 20th Street, and then the thought is to go back to Cedar Lane and then go back to 20th Street as there's more development to the north. We're trying to address issues throughout the entire community without ignoring one section of the community.
What would be the? I agree with you to a certain degree in that the fact that we have budgeted it is another indication of prioritization, and so and our goal setting, or strategic plan a couple of years ago, and then the goal setting in 2014. I think it indicates exactly what you're saying in terms of a plan. What, though, would be, if we change that now, what would be the downside of doing engineering work for both?
There's getting into a situation where we don't know what the actual costs of these projects are going to be until February. Bremer Avenue, Cedar Lane, 3rd Street Bridge. And if you want to proceed forward, the project can be taken to a point. The design work can be 100% done. But then if there isn't the financing to go forward, what if the local option sales tax doesn't pass? Then, we're going to have spent money on engineering for a project that may be tabled for a number of years. So it's about full knowledge and understanding going forward that there's a lot on the table, and we're kind of tossing more balls into the air here, not knowing whether we're going to be able to juggle all of it at the point it comes to we're now getting the bids in.
And again, as we weigh this, I certainly understand Eisenach Village's concern, those type of things, but, and this isn't meant to compare, contrast, but again, they're not the only group that wants some of theirs attended to. Since Eisenach Village started, I think in the addition on the south end of Roundhorn, I just counted up, there's 35 new homes out there. On Tumbleweed, there's 20 new homes, so 55 new homes. So again, I think staff is trying to tell us they're doing as good a job as they can looking at the growth, looking at the folks that are impacted here, and this isn't an either or. It's just purely timing, so I'm not sure a couple more months to get one started versus the other to allow staff to work it into a manageable plan seems reasonable to me.
I guess I would agree. It seems like doing engineering for one over the other is just kind of semantics, where they're doing them all as they can, and they all have, you could say, they have equal priority because they're doing them 17, 18, 19. I mean, if we can have all three of those done, including Cedar River Parkway, by 2019, that's amazing. And you're just trying to manage those the best you can with all the other things that are going on.
In addition to Bremer Avenue and the 3rd Street Bridge.
Exactly. Yeah, we got a brand new town. Yeah, so.
I mean, in a scheme of time, you're talking a matter of 6 or 8 months. They're all engineered. They're all ready. It's not as if a month is going to make a difference or not going to make a difference. Again, I understand the concerns of Eisenach Village. It was out there.
Yeah.
You know, at the time, we were talking about 5 years out and never going to happen. Here I have this thing scheduled 2018, a matter of 18 months possibly starting. I thought that was a big improvement over 5 years, if never. Yeah. And we still have the criticism, it's not coming, it's not coming. We can only do so much at so much time with the money we have. We still don't know what that money is yet. I just wanted at least have the good faith to get all this started so that when the funding comes, and we're coming back on 30, 40 minutes of this discussion, I didn't think it'd go like this, my God. Just to get it started was the whole point of this item for me, was to get it started, regardless of how council prioritizes it. And that's for you to determine. To get it started, whether Cedar Lane was in or it wasn't, or we perceive it, we thought it, or whatever. I don't know. I've been here 6 months. I don't know what the history of all this is. I wanted to get the project started. I want to get the engineering going. Because complexity-wise, Cedar Lane, like it or not, is a simpler plan. It's much more complex, 20th Street, because the railroad is not the friendliest group to get this stuff done with. And then just the sheer magnitude of Cedar River Parkway is a full year because of what you're talking about, an arterial and an 800-foot span of a bridge, and that's massive. So in order of just complexity, that's where the priority went, in a sense, if you can even call it a priority. But it can all be started and finished and engineered in the next 6 to 8 months. It's just getting them sequentially, so we're going to run out of engineers eventually. I mean, WHGS has so many projects. VJ's looking at this one. I don't know how many more engineers we can pull in to do how much more work, because that's going to start to impact your cost too. If you want all this ramped up, we have a limited how many numbers of engineers we use in this region. And so, again, you can talk about this, I guess, as long as you want, but I'm kind of finished with, I just want to get it started. That was the only thing I wanted to accomplish here. I didn't expect all this. I apologize if it caused a lot of emotion and come up that didn't need to, but my goal was just honestly to get it all started so we could get it done within the next 2 years, 3 years, all of it.
I think
that was my
yeah, and
position.
I think since this resolution has to do with engineering work for all three, and since we are beginning to repeat ourselves or move into the next agenda item, I guess may I call the question on this?
Well, you can. We haven't had a motion on it yet.
Oh, sorry. Well, then I will move.
We've just been in discussion.
Oh,
so.
sorry. Yeah, okay. Oh, my gosh, yeah. Well, then we should definitely move this resolution, which I don't have in front of me to read, but.
If you would allow me, I'll go ahead.
Yes, please do.
I would move Resolution 1666 approving to move forward with the engineering needed to begin construction of Phase 1 of Cedar Lane. Phase 1 of 20th Street Northwest and Cedar River Parkway expansion for an estimated cost of $1,145,600.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Council, we've had a pretty good out. Mike, have you?
I just want to make a comment that has nothing to do with spending money. I'm just wearing my journalist hat, and I would just suggest that I like this resolution. In the third whereas, where we say to advance much quicker, I think we'd be better off saying to advance much more quickly. It just sounds better. Thank you. If you can indulge me on that.
Journalism or English?
Punctuation, okay?
A little of both.
A little bit of both.
We can advance more better.
Is that a friendly amendment?
Absolutely.
Dan, do you accept that? Or?
I would, yes, most definitely.
Let's accept it as a friendly amendment on the wording of that, Carly.
On grammar.
We do that. Any other discussion on this? Then we'll go ahead and go to a roll call vote on this, Carla. Just getting her notes down.
Kangas,
Yes.
Lampy,
Yes.
Resnick,
Yes?
Scherer,
Yes.
McKenzie,
Yes.
Waldstein.
Yes.
By vote is 6-0 with one absent. Resolution 1666 is adopted. Brings us to item 3, which is Resolution 1667, approving the professional services agreement with VJ Engineering of Cedar Falls for preparing of the plan documents for Cedar Lane Reconstruction 2017 project. Mike, do we have more to add to this, or is this?
Well, just, lens cap. It wasn't warmed up yet, so. Again, so we look at the section from 2nd Avenue Northeast up to Brown Lane. This is about 60% of the total length, with the second phase being from Brown, just north of Brown Lane up to Horton Road here. So this section right in here has the guardrail, and that's where a future project would look at doing some grading and shoulder widening. And then over here by Pelican Park is where the box culvert is, and be looking at replacing that. So even though it's a little bit shorter section, we think it's about the same dollar amount in that section. So when we get down along the ski club area, hopefully this will show up here. So as Pete Lampy indicated, back in 2006, we did some shoulder widening. We were also able to put some milled asphalt down on the shoulder, and that's actually held up really well. And the plan is to take the existing roadbed, bring in a pavement reclaimer. So it's kind of like a milling machine, but it basically grinds it all up right on site, and then they're able to use a maintainer, spread out, shape it, compact it, and that becomes the new base material for the paving. In this section here, it's very flat. As far as there aren't any rolling hills or anything, which means that if you curb and gutter it, you have no drainage. So you need to keep this section rural so that you have the ability to shed the water off the roadway. So in this area here, we feel that we can get, we're looking at mainline paving being 20-foot wide. So we have two 10-foot driving lanes, and then having 5-foot paved shoulders, and that's intended for the pedestrians and the bicyclists along the corridor.
Is this indicating that the current width is 32, so we'd actually be a little bit narrower? Or?
We would grade the millings out to 32 feet. You want to be, at least a foot past the edge of your pavement. We still need like an earthen shoulder up against the pavement. Doesn't provide much, but we're able to provide in this stretch the 10-foot travel lanes and 5-foot paved shoulders as an area for pedestrians and bicyclists.
Is that going to be marked like 12th Street Northwest is with the painting?
Yeah, and there's
keep the cars to the middle.
Well, and there's going to be a temptation for cars to park here, and so I think along this entire corridor, unless we have designated areas for vehicles to pull off, that the entire corridor would be no parking on the street, on the roadway. And we would still have the share of the road because this, in effect, is you're using like a paved shoulder, which is functioning as your pedestrian area. It's not just for cyclists, it's also for the walkers.
But it will be marked that
Yes, we can mark it.
marks.
Now, there's other sections along the corridor that simply aren't able to be widened out to 30 feet. We have a steep embankment inland, and then we also have a pretty significant embankment dropping off into the river. The revetment stone along the corridor is basically acting as the buffer, as the barrier between the roadway and the cars. And so in this section, about the best we can do is, again, for constructability purposes, we're looking at maintaining the two 10-foot driving lanes, but then adding, instead of a 5-foot paved shoulder, we're adding a 2-foot curb and gutter section to this corridor. And that's basically the limit of what we're able to squeeze in there. On the riverside, where you have the riprap, we would basically level this off, probably with like a roadstone. And so if you were walking out here, and if you're walking correctly, you're walking against the traffic and you had vehicles coming at you and stuff, you would have the ability to step up out of the roadway.
But there's a curb there?
6-inch curb, and that's basically functioning as a bit of a barrier rail between the vehicles and the river. Because before, as I showed, the revetment stone was basically mounted up and functioning as your buffer. We feel it's important that pedestrians have the ability, if we got two vehicles trying to pass each other and you got a pedestrian here, you basically have to just, you got to step off the street.
So then the whatever's that 6 inches higher, I mean, then that has to be flat, I mean, with the curb, right? I mean, you can't kind of step over and down.
Right, or up. So we're fortunate that in these areas we're into some rolling terrain, so we can curb and gutter it and channel the water to intakes to get off the roadway.
And I'm just going to check again. I know I've asked you before, but as best as we know what this might look like in terms of planning it, we won't have to take out any trees. You said no to that one time.
I don't recall ever saying that.
I was
Yeah,
pretty
there are some
sure.
trees that need to come out along there.
What's that?
There are some trees that need to come out along there.
There's a couple that have been hit by snowplows, and we'll have to take a look at to see whether we can get by, because constructability is a big part of it. Being able to, the way they go about building this is they would bring the road reclaimer in, grind everything up, spread it out, shape it, compact it, and then they would pave the middle 20 feet the entire way. And then they come back and they add the 5-foot shoulder on. They add the 2-foot curb and gutter section on. In order to do the mainline paving, you have, these are pavers that have a track drive that sits outside the paved area, and you need at least 3 feet of space for that track drive on the mainline paver. When it comes to doing curb and gutter, the machines have a track drive that is about 1 foot wide. So this is, as much about constructability as it is, the public safety and maintaining some continuity and uniformity throughout the corridor. So,
Just answered my question why we weren't looking at putting a 4-foot walking surface on one side, but would be harder to pave is what you're telling me.
one of the things that was considered by the task force back in 1998-99 was whether this section of Cedar Lane should be made one way. So I was almost a one-year engineer. I think Pete was like, "Who is this guy?"
He used to have hair on top.
I'm like, all right.
But used to both have hair.
So, that's always a possibility in the future, though.
Which brings to your earlier discussion of this has been talked about since '99. So
It was, I started in '97, and there's two things that I remember about that year. The first day on the job, we took a tour of, I think we went down to Marion, Iowa, and we went to another community because we were looking at their municipal design standards as far as street construction. Up until that point, we were building brand new residential streets and commercial streets using seal coat. And so at that point, we were looking at switching to full depth pavement. So my first day on the job, the city council and administrator and I, we went and toured a couple of other communities to look at their subdivisions. The other memorable thing about that year was I was asked to head up a task force of residents along Cedar Lane to look at the reconstruction. It seemed like inevitably different things came up because it was in '99, we went through the 100-year flood, and priorities change. We go through a major disaster like that. We have to recover from that before we can come back and revisit it. We were doing some other street reconstruction projects. We were able to leverage those projects. We were excavating material, and we were able to do some shoulder widening along here. So when there was opportunity, we were able to make enhancements and make improvements, but we never got to addressing the issue of really rebuilding the road and making it more pedestrian friendly. 2011, we did the Parks and Open Space Plan, and again, there was another, I think, effort to review and find ways to address the needs of the community with the fact that this is a very popular place for walkers and bikers, in addition to the growth and development of the neighborhoods that is occurring.
We probably don't want to get into the discussion tonight, but you mentioned no places for parking. Would there, when we get into the development of this, would there be a possibility to build some of those types of things into it for usage of the river? And
I know there is up by Brown Lane. It kind of widens out there, and I've thought about, do we do some, build some areas where, maybe there's, 2 or 3 parallel parking spots along there, or are they, pole and diagonal parking? There are a couple locations that would support that. We get further north up by Pelican Park. There's a parking lot there. Otherwise, you're down by the ski club, and I don't know, Pete, you probably maybe got some thoughts on that.
It's all private property.
Yeah, there's a couple spots basically that I know are common parking areas that could be possibly developed in. There's a good deal of it gets parked, and I have people park in my driveway. I come out and there's a truck sitting in the driveway, and I go, But over in the open area on the front of the ski club, there's quite a few times there'll be vehicles parked there. There generally is not very much on the stretch going to the south. 1 or 2 times a year you might get somebody parking along the side of the road there on the east side. Up by Groening's property, there is a little draw-in up there that one is quite a bit more because they like fishing right off that corner right in there. So you've got the corner up where Brown Lane comes in and that little spot right in there. That would be the places to look at them for any parking if you'd want to go that way.
Do you anticipate straightening out that south entrance that comes on to 2nd Street down here by the trailhead, or will that still have such a curve in it?
Yeah, we want to address in effect, the drainage area, and does that mean we bury the pipe or do something different? That's an area that is going to be somewhat challenging. We'll have to see what we can do, because I don't know if we're going to be able to carry the 30 feet all the way around that, or whether we're going to have to narrow it and do something a little bit different. That's one challenge area for us, and we'll have to come back and show you what our recommendation is there. Like I said, the one thought is, do we simply extend the culvert pipe where the ditch is and then level it off? That might be one option.
A few steps up into the trailhead there or something.
And then there's a utility pole, power pole that sits in the corner as well. Yeah.
I just know that's a tough corner for visibility for both vehicles and walkers and bikers.
At one time, it was looked at to basically flatten the curve out and bring it right on, grade it right on up to where the drinking fountain is. And, where the little gravel parking area is, that was going to be where it outletted. We can revisit that as well. That has the best visibility and is probably the safest, but there are some adverse impacts to what we've kind of developed into a bit of a park there.
That may be where some selective pruning may help and get rid of a few trees right on the apex of the curve. And are we ready for a motion?
Any other questions? We can go, anything from the public? Pete's already spoken, so go ahead and have a motion then.
I would move Resolution 1667 approving the professional service agreement with VJ Engineering at Cedar Falls for the preparation of plan documents for the Cedar Lane Construction 2017 project for a not-to-exceed fee of $70,600.
Second. Let me say that again. That was a second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further comments from council before we go to a vote on this? I guess my comment or statement would still be I would like to see something coming forward for 20th Street to get moving forward. If it's October,
We'll expedite that as much as we can, sir.
Okay, Carla?
Waldstein.
Yes.
Lampy.
Yes.
Scher.
Yes.
Reznacek.
Yes.
Angus.
Yes.
McKenzie.
Yes.
By a vote of 6-0 with one absent, Resolution 1667 is adopted. We go to item number 4, which is reviewing the traffic study and lane geometry for Iowa Highway 3, the Bremer Avenue reconstruction.
Before we get into it, can I just ask a protocol question about that?
Oh, what?
About this item. I think on our agenda, or it's somewhere, it said we're approving the traffic study. Is it a review, or is it an approval, or is it both? I mean, we haven't really seen a traffic study.
On mine, it says approval. It's just a review.
I thought I saw approval somewhere.
Something.
Okay, that's fine. That's
We're
either I read it.
still in the discussion stages as to what the actual.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Scott Sweet from WHKS here is going to provide an update. We were hoping at this point that we would have the DOT's final version of the traffic study to distribute. We don't have that at this time. They're still going through a final iteration review process. Otherwise, I felt it very important to have Scott come here, have the discussion with the council, so that it can get out to the public what are the significant elements within the traffic study that he can share with us. I think right now they're kind of going through more of a editing process to make sure that like grammatical errors and anything else that may show up. They're trying to get that finalized out here. At the point it is, and we are given a copy of that, we will make it available to the public and to the council online. But since the major elements have basically been defined and determined, I wanted Scott to get down here because the third and final public information meeting is scheduled for August 22nd. So I didn't feel that we could wait until like August 15th to have an update. We needed to do it now so that the council and the public understood what the elements are within that traffic study.
Okay, so we will go to Scott to go ahead and give us our update.
You bet. Thank you. As Mike said, I'm Scott Sweet. I'm the project manager for WHKS, and so we have received comments back from the DOT. We have addressed those. We resubmitted it to them this morning. Sometime I was out of the office. They thought they could have comments, their final cursory review done in 2 to 3 days. So we're hoping to have everything, to the city by the end of this week. So we wanted to update you on sort of what was in there, though, and the high points. So basically what I'm here is what was the objective of the study? And basically it was to evaluate the feasibility of a road diet, which is basically a conversion from a 4-lane to a 3-lane from 20th Street Northwest to 8th Street Northeast. A road diet may improve safety, convenience, and functionality. So that's where we sort of started on this project. When we started this back. We did traffic counts last fall. We had a company in here that did traffic counts on 14 different intersections. So basically the existing conditions out there, it's a 4-lane section. It's 48 feet or 48-foot curb face to curb face from 20th to 12th, and then 66 feet, the remainder of the stretch. We did traffic counts at each of the intersections to establish turning movements. We looked at, it also identified pedestrians, trucks, so we have a lot of information. And from that, we were able to establish peak hour traffic volumes, and that's the basis for looking at some of the intersection analysis that we're going through. Looking at a 3-lane condition is basically going to a 3-lane section with either 2-way left turn lanes, or in some cases, maybe a possible dedicated left turn lane is what we're looking at. There were no change in the existing roadway widths. They're going to stay the same as for reconstruction. And basically then from the 2016 peak hour traffic volumes, they're adjusted based on traffic on a 1% growth rate, looking ahead to jump those up to a 2036 traffic volume count. Basically, this one doesn't go through, but I'm not sure why. But basically, we get a whole bunch of different pictures that show all the different intersections with all the different turning paths for each of the intersections that we analyzed, both the 2016 and the 2036. So the first step, what we looked at was the intersection analysis. We used the highway capacity manual in 2010. We look at level of service, which basically takes into account the peak hour turning movements, lane configuration, traffic control, if it's a stop sign, if it's signalized, if it's uncontrolled. And basically level of service is your average delay at the intersection, and that's the measurement that is sort of used to rate different intersections, how they operate. Basically, the level of service, for some reason, it's not showing up. It showed up great on my... Hey, here, I can... Yeah. Let me turn this over here for a second. Take off the lens cap. Turn it on. Basically, your level of service goes from A to F, A being the best, F being the worst condition. Level of service, we look at C is generally considered acceptable for intersection work as we go through. Well, I think I'm just going to continue on with this. Sort of. Basically, what we did is we looked at the existing configuration, which is the 4-lane. Here, I'll do. I learned this from Mike here, just watching this to be able to hold this up so you can hear me. The existing configuration, the 4-lane in 2016, all the intersections we analyzed gave us a level of service C or better. Also looking at the improved traffic or the increased traffic in 2036, we were also still at a level of service C. So basically, with the increase of traffic, the 4-lane would operate generally the same as it does today. We also looked at the 3-lane configuration. Basically, what we looked at in 2016 and 2036 met the level of service C or better, with the exception in 2036 of those 3 intersections, or those 2 intersections in one movement: 12th Street Northwest, 8th Street Southwest, and eastbound of 4th Street Northwest. And basically, that's 20 years down the road. So what we're looking at is, at that time, could we do some other control, which would be, would we add a stoplight at those intersections? Would you do some geometric configuration changes? Maybe add a dual left turn lane, but we also, realize that in the future you're going to have Cedar Parkway. So how does that affect the traffic that's going down Bremer Avenue? That's something that we considered. So we looked at that as part of a mitigating factor as we move ahead in the design.
But it's also factored into your projections for 2036?
2036, we did not figure Cedar Parkway as
not.
being there.
Okay.
So it is basically the traffic that's there today at a growth rate of 1%. So that was the intersection analysis. Basically, looking at it from a capacity or a level of service, the 3-lane configuration is adequate, just as the 4-lane is. So that was the intersection analysis portion of the study. We also wanted to just talk pedestrian crossings because we just wanted to sort of talk about that in both situations. They're pretty much the same. It gives you, with the new construction, it gives you an opportunity for improved crossings. If you're looking at curb bulb outs, that would reduce the crossing lengths. 3-lane configuration also would reduce conflict points. And just as a side note, meeting with Bill and Travis Wednesday to sort of talk about some of the other enhancements that was at your work study session. The streetscape portions on Wednesday. The next thing that we really looked at was the crash analysis, the differences between what's happening and sort of what we've seen from the DOT and what they've seen in some of the studies that have been done. Basically, what we did is we looked at a 3-year period from 12 to 14, and what we looked at were manner of crashes. Basically, the 4 highlighted ones along the corridor were rear end, side swipe, angle for left turns, and then broadside. And this is sort of the crash summary data. I will zoom in on it. Basically, in that 3-year period along the corridor, there were 111 crashes. 53 of those were rear end, 23 were side swiped, angle on coming left turn for 14, and broadside were 14. Basically, looking at those, you had 37 with minor injuries, 17 with possible injuries, and 91 with property damage only. So that was sort of an analysis that we did of the existing crash data that we were able to get from the Iowa DOT through some of their systems. We also looked at crash data in the city. In that same 3-year period, there were 429 crashes, and 111 of those were along the corridor. So roughly 25% of the crashes that were reported were along the corridor. Basically, looking at the crash rate along Iowa 3, that equates to 575 per 100 million vehicle miles was the rate. The state average on a road of similar characteristics is 293 per 100 million vehicle miles. So it's almost close to double the crash rate.
Really bad drivers.
Crash reduction, we talked to the Iowa DOT, and they've done a study that looked at 15 corridors where they converted from a 4-lane to a 3-lane. And basically, based on similar or more traffic that is currently on Bremer Avenue, they looked at the lane reduction versus the 4-lane. And based on that study, these were I don't know if we can see all of them, but this was the crash reduction that they realized in their study, which basically non-collision, it reduced it 85%, head-on 42%. The ones in blue are the sort of the 4 major ones that we observed as part of the Bremer Avenue section, where we reduced them anywhere from 35 to 74% in a 3-lane section versus a 4-lane section. Another town here recently that did this was Cresco, Iowa, on Iowa 9. They did this in 2008, and since that time they've seen a decrease of 50% in total crashes, 64% in injuries, and 52% in property damages cost since their conversion from 4-lane to 3-lane. So basically, this is the data that we've gathered that we have in our report, and basically it comes down to what were our findings and recommendations, and this is our recommendation that we'll make to the DOT. Basically is that we should proceed from the 4 to the 3-lane section in this area. The crash data suggests that we can reduce the crashes from 111 in the corridor down to 60, is what we're hoping, looking at approximately a 50% reduction. Vehicle delay may slightly increase at some of the intersections, but they'll still operate at acceptable levels. And as part of this, the general work that would need to be done as part of the traffic signals is some retiming and then moving the heads of the traffic signals to meet up with the new lane configurations. The other general benefits and the conclusions, the lane reduction includes a buffer and on-street parking in the 66-foot wide section to provide additional space between the pedestrians and the moving vehicles, especially beneficial in the downtown business area. Adding the bump outs would increase the pedestrian safety at the intersections by reducing their travel time across the intersection. It's basically because we're replacing the pavement at the existing width. Basically, the changes can be done with paint. It's more of a striping than a reconstruction figure, which also it's inexpensive if it wants to be reversed in the future. Overall, of all the communities in which the Iowa DOT has implemented a road diet, only one city has ever decided to reverse the decision. So the DOT felt that this is a good system to go with. So based on the study that we did, reducing the existing Iowa 3 Bremer Avenue 4-lane section to 3-lane section with left turn lanes or 2-way left turns is feasible, and that's going to be our recommendation for the corridor to the Iowa Department of Transportation.
Scott, that's kind of interesting. One city has to reverse. Can you tell us anything about what was going on there?
No, I don't know. I think it was probably public perception that they wanted to go back to the 4-lane. I don't know exactly which city it was.
Could we get a list of cities that have done it? Again, that
Yeah.
one of the
There's
things I'd like
several
to do is be
Masons.
able to visit with those community leaders and.
It's not just paint, though. It's your signals would have to change if you went back to the 4 lanes as well. So
Basically, you'd have to move the signal heads one way or the other so that they're centered on the traffic lane. So
How would a three-lane highway accommodate agricultural equipment? Something,
it'd be handled the same way it handles in the 4-lane. If they can't get through on a 4-lane, the width of the road doesn't change. You know, so
wouldn't they be passing into, I mean, if you've got a 20-foot tillage tool or something, wouldn't you be taking up a turning lane?
Yeah, it would.
On traffic,
Yeah.
oncoming traffic in a turning lane?
Mm-hmm.
So you really couldn't do that, though.
Well, it's more of a perception that you see them coming. You may stay in your lane. Right now, the only crossings that we'd have in the 3-lane section generally along the route that I think that is concerned up to 4th. The intersection, well, there are I was thinking on the east side, there's no entrances mid-block.
Dave, you actually have more space than you do east of town. If east of town, you've got your 12-foot driving lane, and then you have the center two-way left turn lane. Here in the downtown, you have that plus the 5-foot buffer. So if they're not able to do it east of town, east of Terex, you know, it's actually wider in the downtown.
But there's no cars parked on both sides of the street out
Yeah,
there.
the Terex traffic is a little bit different out there.
So are you saying they drive on the shoulder? That they actually mount
It's just some way
the
to
grass
have to
area?
see, because I know, because we're limited, I think one of the differences I would see from Waverly compared to other communities is the requirement to cross the bridge.
Well, that remains 4-lane. That section between the river and just west of 4th Street is still a 4-lane configuration in order to be able to accommodate the turning truck movements. Is that correct, Scott?
Yeah, the DOT is looking at, they're still trying to figure out if there's a way that
Okay.
they can do it, but.
But that was
to
at
go
the
to a
study,
3-lane.
or at the community session, that was
Yeah.
what was presented there, was that that segment that you just
Right.
described would remain 4 lanes.
And that's one of the issues yet that they're still looking at
Okay.
as we go through this. But there is a way to do it as a 3-lane section through there with different offsets to the lanes, and not needing a buffer. There may not be a buffer across the bridge. There's already a sidewalk through there.
So they're going to go across a bridge as 4-lane and then merge into single lanes once you get.
That's what we show right now. It's a 3-lane on each side of the bridge. The DOT is still looking at trying to come up with a way if they can maintain a 3-lane section all the way through town by shifting the lanes out, maybe widening the median.
You're going to see people going across the bridge, getting in the wrong lane, don't want to turn, and then have to try and merge and slow down traffic going west.
And that's one of the last things that we're looking at before the next,
To see whether the bridge.
before
can
the
be
August
3 lanes.
22nd public meeting, to see if there is a way that we can maintain the DOT would like to maintain a 3-lane section all the way through town and not go back to the 4-lane.
Scott, will that be in the traffic study that's released at the end of the week or not?
Probably not. That'll be more brought up at the next public information.
Will it maybe be available by August 15th?
It might, yeah, I can see
Okay.
if we can have that.
Dan, getting back to your question as far as is there information out there related to the other communities that have gone through this conversion? Yes, there is. And if the recommendation the recommendation Scott's presenting sounds like is to do the conversion from 4-lane to 3-lane. So as a companion document to that, we were looking at providing a link to the Iowa DOT study of these communities that went through the 4-lane to 3-lane conversion, so that you would have that, in effect, that technical document that reviewed and studied these other communities out there that have done this since, I think, goes back to about 2000.
Yeah, I know. I know Clear Lake has done it. Mason City has done it.
I found document out there
Manchester,
for
I think
Sioux Center and Crisco.
Center.
So, again, it's just
Storm Lake.
the technical information is great, but it's again talking to community members to
Yep.
to balance out the technical information, I guess.
How is, I guess, if you're making a recommendation to the DOT on behalf of the city of Waverly?
No. On behalf of WHKS.
Oh,
That's our recommendation, because we were hired by the Iowa DOT to provide them a recommendation on conversion from 4-lane to 3-lane. And then they would have to accept it and then work out with the city how the final resolution is between that. But our recommendation goes to the DOT. It's not based on any recommendation from the city. Your recommendation would be to weigh our recommendation and see if you decide to endorse it.
I thought we hired WHKS to also take in the community input.
No, we hired them to help facilitate some public information meetings, to look at the downtown streetscaping, and to provide, in particular with the streetscaping, to provide some renderings. And this is what's going to come out of the meeting that Bill's going to attend with them on Wednesday, is now that we've worked through some of the opportunities and recommendations, both from the chamber and the public, it's now to take it and actually show what those would look like in renderings, as well as what is acceptable to the DOT. They're serving that function there, okay? When it comes to the traffic study, my expectation of the DOT and any consultant is that based off of the data, based off of the experience and history, that they present what is the safest, most effective, efficient thing to do for the community.
So who's coordinating the citizen input then for us?
The DOT actually has representatives that are actually doing that. So they've my understanding was that they were actually only going to do it at one meeting, but they're actually now doing it at every meeting. That Valerie is coming down, and she is the DOT person who has been getting people sign in and to solicit public comments. So
they'll coordinate a summary of
they're
that?
coordinating that, but we're also allowing people to contact Scott or myself, and if they feel more comfortable doing that, and then we forward it all on, so it's...
Okay.
So yeah, we haven't lost any of the public comments or anything.
Will your report to the DOT be balanced with the community? I guess we've got businesses downtown that have been...
No, our recommendation is based on the feasibility, basically looking at functionality, level of service.
Driven.
Yeah, it's data driven. The public portion is the DOT a little bit, and then it's basically your input into that as a council.
And they were very clear at the public input meeting that they were focusing exclusively on safety and traffic efficiency. Not to discount any of the public comments, but that their study would focus on that. And then there was another venue for collecting there was another medium, I guess, for collecting the public input and the comments. And there were business leaders there who spoke to what you're alluding to, Dave.
So if you, since the DOT has a check to write in this whole project, and they're asking you what your opinion is, and the city council says, no, we're not going to go with a 3-lane, we like our 4 lanes, does the DOT have an option to say, well, then we're not doing the project?
As you negotiate your agreement with them for the project, which I think the only one we have currently is the pre-design, or is the design portion, is there usually an agreement between the city and the state that covers all that. So it'd be a negotiation.
Yes, they can pull funding for the project if they don't like what our decision is.
I guess I don't want to speak for the DOT on if they would or if they want.
Possible?
Is it possible? Everything is possible.
But the size of the roadway won't be any different whether.
Right.
Size of the roadway,
So the
but
cost
what I'm
shouldn't
saying
be.
is we're going to do what the DOT says because they're paying for the majority of the project.
Oh, I don't think I would put that on the DOT that way. I think that they have concerns about. I think they have some concerns converting it to a 3-lane too, but they also want to look at the the safety and the consideration for the traveling public is what really the DOT is
tasked with for the state of Iowa.
Well,
I
another-
wanted to kind of go back to when you did the comparison of the level of service with 4-lane and 3-lane. You did say with the 3-lane, we actually lose the level of service at those 3 intersections.
In 2030, based on the 2000
projecting out, it
projected out, on
actually gets worse at
2036.
those.
Yeah, and a lot of that is because 12th is a T intersection and
An odd
8th
angle.
at an odd angle, and so as you increase traffic, you have more conflicts. There's not as much time to get across the road. So yeah, but that's if 2036 traffic matches the model that we have.
Yeah,
That's why we sort of
taking out
mentioned the
Parkway.
possibility of Cedar Parkway expansion. May take off the increase. It's hard to. The best we can do is to use our 1% growth rate for the 20 years and go from there.
Yeah, and the one I'm still interested in hearing is that downtown 4 blocks here on the west side of the river that could potentially still be 4-lane, and to me it seems really awkward to go 3 lanes for the whole length of it and then only have this area for 4-lane. If we're going to keep that area 4-lane, to me, keeping the whole thing 4-lane makes a lot more sense, because you're going to end up with all sorts of confusion down there for people, out-of-town people coming in. And being a college town, we do have a lot of people that are coming from out of town that do come into town, so that's a concern. I've lived in a community that went from a 4-lane to a 3-lane back around 2000. It was one of the more heavily traveled roads in that town, not as big as Waverly, and it actually transitioned very smoothly, but again, not quite nearly the level of traffic. I used to travel through Clear Lake when it was 4-lane, and have since been through with 3 lanes, and it seems to move well there. Again, not there enough to know whether it actually is going through, so I've seen it, but I just, for the way our downtown is and the way our kind of structured, and as I said, with that middle section, if that's going to stay 4-lane, it just doesn't seem to make sense to me to go to a 3-lane on that. 3-lane and then 4-lane and back to 3-lane, and I'd almost more see that narrow section on the west side of town maybe being 3-lane and keeping it where we go on the east side of town where you head out of town and it's 3-lane there, but the big stretch staying 4-lane. That's just my thoughts.
Yeah, and maybe I'll talk to the DOT tomorrow and see where they're at looking at the replacement of that 4-lane section with the 3-lane to see if we can have that included as an appendix to this, so that we'd actually have a display that would show what our thinking is towards how that would work, and to be able to make those truck turning movements.
So, Scott, is it your impression that if there was a choice between overwhelming opinion in a community for one option and greater safety on the other side, that the DOT would always default to the safety answer, or would they be persuadable, do you think, if citizens had another issue?
I think only the DOT should answer that.
Yeah, I suspected that as soon as I asked.
I would prefer to.
Yeah.
I would like to defer to the Department of Transportation on their decisions.
Well, I should probably ask this to Mike Cherry then. Can we get that information from the DOT, do you think?
Procedurally, I think we need to see the final traffic study. What you have is a very brief summary of what's in it. I think it's important that we're able to see the final document, digest it, scrutinize it, and then ask those questions.
Yeah.
I think, as Scott indicated, they're still, struggling with this section right in the middle between on the west side of the river between 1st and 4th, and I'd like to give them an opportunity to see what their recommendation is. They're expected. The citizens' expectation of our DOT is for the safety of the traveling public. and they need to be given the opportunity to work through that, to look at the existing conditions, to look, past, present, and the projected conditions, and make a recommendation as far as what is in the best interest of the traveling public. And then, I think we have the opportunity to weigh in as far as what is that going to mean to our community. How is that going to impact retail businesses along the corridor? How is that going to impact, we have a downtown business district that's along a state highway. So we have a vested interest in how that downtown business district thrives. So that's where we end up with the conversion of these two interests. Their interest in the safety to the traveling public, which is also ours, but also extends to the vitality of our central business district.
So everything I've heard in these couple of meetings where Scott has been here and there's been some public input, this question that these guys are asking, was raised before too by others, and it seems to me that the answer that we're getting is, that it is a negotiation or at least a collaboration at best, I guess, which I get. I mean, I think we need to, approach it that way rather than start in a confrontational way. But it is also true, I think, that people are curious about who is the ultimate authority. I mean, just to know that, and I'm guessing there's an answer to that, and I'm guessing it's the DOT. But that's probably not. But I don't know that. But I think we shouldn't focus on that question myself. I think we should focus on the collaboration and negotiation that has to take place between council representing, all of the various elements of what we're hearing, business input, citizenry input, people who don't live near the downtown and have an interest in how they pass through it, transportation, safety, all of those things. And because there will be things that we have to act on, but I don't know that by virtue of our action that necessarily, if there were a loggerhead, that would carry much weight. But I don't know that, but I also think we shouldn't probably focus on that too much.
Yeah, I agree. I think the word you used, the collaboration, is much better than the negotiation, is to see what the DOT feels. They may not accept our recommendation, but we got to give them that opportunity.
A couple of technical data points. When we compare traffic going east-west on Highway 3, do we know how that compares from like West Bremer south on 4th Street? I'm just thinking we've already taken steps. We're going to take more steps to go from a 2-lane to a 3-lane in that section, and many of the implement dealers that are voice concerns about Bremer are traversing that area now. And to me, at times, the traffic is very similar as far as volume and people trying to turn and those type of things. As indicated, you get east of town, they're already traversing that area without any issues. So I understand, and again, I'm not making these comments because I've made up my mind, so I want folks to continue to provide feedback. But as I compare other parts of town that have similar traffic patterns, similar road construction, I think those folks are navigating that without any issues. And I come back to the safety factor that's in here. When you go out and read the Iowa study, there's a good Michigan study out there. When you're decreasing accidents and injuries by 50, 75%, I think that has to weigh into the equation quite heavily.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I think the data is good, but we need to make sure that we're balancing it with people. As I went into this, I was led to believe that we'd have a lot of citizen input and business owner input. To me, there's there's many individuals down there that have been doing traffic studies for 50 years, because they've been living the traffic. And I take a lot of stock in the wisdom that they would provide too. So hopefully we can balance that, the data, with the data from the people that have been living the traffic too. So.
And I agree with that. I think we need to be careful, though, too, and not necessarily put them all into one position. I know I've heard from business owners, some who want 4-lane, some who don't care, and some who want 3-lane. So they're not all of one mind necessarily either, but we need to listen to all of them, obviously.
That's what I was interested, how we're tabulating the people, and because I've heard nothing but leave it 4-lane. So it'd be interesting to hear if they're the 3-lane proponents and how we're actually capturing that.
Right. And at the public meetings, we do hear both. Probably more for the 4-lane, but we do hear.
How are we capturing?
Oh, we're taking notes
and make sure that when it comes down to us actually in a position to make a decision, that we've got factual data that can't be disputed.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I would encourage each council person to try to make an effort to the last public forum, because I think you just walking around and not necessarily speaking with people, you hear a lot. And I've gotten feedback from individuals that have a strong opinion one way or the other that haven't even taken time to come to either one of the open houses. So sometimes you question what they're formulating their opinions on if they haven't looked at some of the options, those type of things. But to me, I've gained a lot by attending the 2 meetings and just listening.
I agree.
Other discussion? Mike? You want to volunteer to help the editing and the wordsmithing that they were doing? No? Okay.
He hasn't found any grammatical errors yet.
Wonder if there are.
I guess the only thing I can say or add is you look at all the different corridors that we have around town. On the east side, we got 3 lanes. On the 10th Street Southwest, that's 4 with a big median. And what's the new expansion? I can't remember what lane configuration that is right now. But what's it going to be going forward on the other side of the bridge? What's the goal of each of these separate corridors? And we got to figure out certain business owners, they want people to stop, so they want maybe 3 lanes or parking so people can stop and eat, spend some money. These other corridors, we want people to get through. We want 4 lanes express. So, I don't know. It's a challenge, but as a city, we got to find out what we really want it to be. Like I said, everybody's got their own opinion, and you'll find from 100 other people what they want. But what does Waverly want, or what does Waverly need for it, is what we need to get at. So that's about it.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
That is it on our regular business on the agenda. Next is just reports from boards and commissions. We have the monthly financial report. Things are clicking along as supposed to be for right now. Right? Everything's clicking along as where we're supposed to be right now, waiting for our next big property tax check from the state to come. Planning and Zoning Commission meetings from July. Anything on that? Edie?
I'm not the representative any longer.
It was canceled due to lack of quorum.
Oh, there wasn't any?
Yeah, I'm not the liaison any longer.
Who's on P&Z then?
You are.
No, not on P&Z.
Oh, I don't know then.
I wasn't on P&Z. I was moved to.
I was moved to utilities.
Oh, I'll have to double check. Who is?
Okay, yeah.
Well, that report was a really fast read for me. It only had 1 sentence.
Hold that one up. Board of Adjustment, the only thing I wanted to highlight on that, that's a board of 5 members. In July, 3 of the members were there. The first item that came up, there was a conflict of interest. So there were only 2 members to be able to act, so there was no quorum, so nothing was held on that. That's going to be pushed back to August. And then the second item was a variance request for a garage to be built on a corner lot, and with our setback requirements on corner lots, they weren't able to fit it in there, and so they did not get the variance on that. But have hopefully a quorum on August, and that's okay. In his absence, in July, Pete was reelected as the chair of the board, so. That's what you get for not showing up, so. Carla could have stopped herself from being reappointed, but she went ahead and voted for it for vice. Golf Commission meetings, Wes isn't here, but moving along with golf course. Summer has been okay.
It's been okay. Wanted to tell you that we started foot golf a week ago last Saturday, and foot golf is golf using a soccer ball that you kick. And we've got 21-inch holes in out-of-play areas or in the rough, and 2 holes of foot golf usually fits on 1 hole of a regular golf course. So we've got 9 holes right now, hoping to expand to 18 in the future on the front 9, and we've already had rounds played. After 4 o'clock on Saturday and Sunday nights right now, hopefully it will be expanded in the future. $5 for 9 holes, $10 for 18. You can't beat it. Bring the kids.
Okay, staff comments. Anything additional?
I don't have anything, sir, unless staff has anything you'd like to add.
I'd like to, just because it was mentioned tonight, meeting with WHKS on Wednesday about the streetscape, and it is limited to beyond the curb, so we're not talking about any of the configuration issues. Did meet with Waverly Utilities briefly today about lighting. They have a lighting study back that DOT required as far as how many lumens they have to do per block. And so that's going to be taken into consideration when we're looking at streetscape. So we're trying to work with WU to do that, as well as looking at our group, that the downtown merchants, about streetscape. And we're just going to try to get some ideas with Scott this week.
Okay, city council comments. Start Edie.
I don't have any, thank you.
Dan?
Tonight.
Dave? Moving right along.
No, thanks.
Dan? Chuck, anything? Mayor Pro Tem comments. I don't really have anything other than we've got National Night Out tomorrow. Come on down to Coleman and share some nice community time there. We've had a couple nice weeks here where we had the Heritage Days a few weeks ago, and then last week was the Bremer County Fair, and it's again nice to be able to get out as a community tomorrow night and show that support and be there with the police. We did have some communications. Tab, did you want to mention anything on the ash tree update?
Sure. I wrote 4 articles for the newspaper. 2 of them have been published so far, and it's on a weekly basis. The first one was how to identify an ash tree in your yard, just in case people didn't know how to do that. Second one was what the symptoms and treatments are for emerald ash borer. The third one was what the city's doing. And the fourth one is what private residents should be doing. And if you bear with me, I'd like to read one paragraph out of the private residents one. One of the most serious mistakes people have made was to deny the problem until infestations are present and more difficult and costly to remove. It's safe to say that every ash tree in Waverly has EAB at some level of infestation. It's the city's recommendation to start now and remove potentially infected and dangerous ash trees to ensure the safety of the citizens and their property. I'm telling everybody I know that's got an ash tree on their yard, start saving your money and get it out of there as soon as possible. If you wait too long, they get crispy and they become very dangerous to remove. Michigan, Ohio, the 5 or 6 states around there lost 30 million ash trees. We're going to lose most of our ash trees in town. But in my city article, we talk about how we're going to be planting and that sort of thing too.
I would maybe add that one of the things we probably don't want to encourage is folks saving it for firewood and then transporting it across the state when they go to other campgrounds, other communities, those type of things.
Actually, the entire state is under quarantine right now. You can move it around the state because the whole state's basically infested. You just can't take it out of state.
All right. Motion on item P.
Move that we adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Motion is second. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
We are adjourned.